So we never fought, and he was always right. So far, this worked just fine. It's an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce Rabbi Moshe Breslauer. Rabbanim, Rosh Yeshiva, Hanholas Hakol, friends, members, guests, lest I've left somebody out, etc. Reb Naftali just mentioned to you something that happened that he remembers when he was a little boy. I look around over here and I see people who certainly have every reason to remember when I was a little boy. And that brings me to the question of why are we here tonight? The Parshas HaShavua began yesterday. Vayishma Yisrael, Chosin Moshe. A few psukim later it says Vayavo Yisrael. Yisrael heard and Yisrael came. And Rashi asked, Ma Shmua Shama Uva. What tidings, what news, what chiddush, what information did he hear that made him come? And Rashi answers. But I want to delve on the question. Ma Shmua Shama Uva. What did he hear that caused him to come? He left Kevodah Shel Olam to come to a midbar. Ma Shmua Shama Uva. I might paraphrase for all those who are here tonight. Our mail these days has no dearth of invitation to dinners. 3 or 4 kollel, 3 or 4 yeshivas, 2 or 3 of them where our children, grandchildren, in-laws attend. Somehow, because of past or present, there is some sort of an obligation. There is no lack of fancy dinners in this season. And here we have a dinner. The food is undoubtedly tempting. But why did people come out to come? From the price that you saw on the invitation, fundraising is obviously not the purpose. So, Ma Shmua Shama Uva. What reason is there in a winter night? Travel is a little bit difficult. Even to get onto the sidewalks of New York is a little difficult and a little slippery. What made people come? And Kenai and Horan, it's a nice oilam, it's a beautiful oilam. As our Stern said, this is Kehillas Yaakov. And I would say, I would attempt to say, the answer might be Heimweh, Sehnsucht. For the next generation, we have to call it nostalgia. There's something for those who used to be here that pulls them back. A sort of a homing instinct. And maybe I'm just revealing what I feel, but somehow I sense this is what everyone feels. I look around and I see faces. Obviously, I have the disadvantage of not looking at my own. And I see people who were part of my Seviva, part of the community in which I lived and I grew 40 and 50 years ago, when I was that little boy that I spoke about before. Now we're in the age where we have children and grandchildren, and many of them are here. I see the faces of the parents in children. And one is overwhelmed by memories. As perhaps it's in place to give this nostalgia a bit of expression. On the one hand, we are here, the covered Achava Mordechai ben Yosef Pressburger, and a lot's been said, and not enough has been said. And even if I add my little bit, it still won't be enough. Because everyone mentions one aspect, and unless you knew him, you don't have the understanding of the total person. I remember in Tafshin Gimel 43, when he came to my father's house, shall I call it with that perennial briefcase? And in his unassuming, quiet way, presented himself for the position of chazan and teacher. I was the little boy, I didn't know what was going on, but obviously he became the chazan and the teacher. And I recall the Mincha Maariv on Thursday night, the first day of Hanukkah, Tafshin Gimel. He was the Shliach Tzibur, and that was where Kehillas Yaakov was launched. And in this quiet, unassuming way, besides being Mr. Kehillas Yaakov, besides being Chaver L'chol Asher Yereucha, besides undertaking all those things that no one else undertook and had to be done, the Ma'asef L'chol HaMachanos, he was also a Rodef Sholem and an Ohev Sholem. I remember my mother, Alea Sholem, used to say, der hat sich aufgeregt und der hat sich aufgeregt und das wird sehr aufregend sein. People have emotions, and where people feel at home, that's especially where emotions come to the fore. And he had a way with people even older than he was, quiet, nicht aufregen, es wird gut sein. He was Ohev Sholem veRodef Sholem. And of all the other things that we should take along from this evening to his memory, this midah of Aaron HaKohen should be with us also. Nostalgia. Where does nostalgia fit into someone who thinks al pi Torah? It's become modern to quote the Ibn Ezra again, Ha'aba Ayin, Ha'osad adayan, ha'hovi keheref ayin. The past is gone, the future isn't here yet, the present is just a moment, a split second. No place for nostalgia with such an attitude. But recently we read Oz Yoshia, and there in Oz Yoshia, it gives us a chance to verbalize what nostalgia really means. And it fits very well in reference to Kehillas Yaakov. Rav Stern Shlita spoke about Zeh Keli ve'anvehu. The pasuk follows with Elokei avi va'arom imenu, the God of my father. And there Rashi says, what does Elokei avi mean? Lo ani techilas hakedusha. I am not the one who made myself. I am not the beginning of the madrega of kedusha that I have attained. Whatever level of adherence to the Rebbeinu Shalom, of shmiras haTorah ve'hamitzvah that I attained, I'm not the beginning. There's no such thing as a self-made man. Elo muchzekes ve'omedes li hakedusha ve'elohuso olai. Where did this kedusha, the little bit that I had, this little bit of shaykhus to the Rebbeinu Shalom, where did this come from? Muchzekes olai mimei avoisa. It became a chazakah for me. It's something that became part and parcel of me. Mimei avosai, from the days of my ancestors. I am the product of past generations. And I have to be maki and recognize that whatever success I may have had, whatever I may have attained, it stems from them. But when I think back at Kehillas Yaakov personally, I think back of my bar mitzvah. I think back of my first opportunity to learn. I think back of my Sheva Barachos. Everyone has opportunities to think back. The child that brought a wimple, the bar mitzvah speech, the chasana, the special occasions on the way, the unique flavor of the Yomim Tovim. At every point, something left an impact and something left a mark. Everyone personally should think, wherever I am right now, something started in Kehillas Yaakov. A little devotion to learn a little more. A better understanding of what the demands of tznius actually mean in a practical sense. What does it mean to stand b'fnei HaMelech and articulate the words correctly? And above all, we can say it here together. We were exposed to a hashkafa of emes and sheker. We were exposed to a hashkafa without compromise. We learned to look at Eretz Yisrael and contrast it to Medinas Yisrael and understand the difference between the two. Not many congregants from other congregations can claim to have been exposed to such a chinuch. And it left something in us. It molded us. And that which it made of us, that kedusha, that desire to attend an extra shiur, that desire to master even a little masechta, but to master it. Not to daven at age 50 the way one davened at age 30. That began in Kehillas Yaakov. Elohei Avi, my shaychus, my connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu that was molded here in Kilas Yaakov. And we look back to these occasions when a drasha made an impact, when a good word and a smile made an impression, and when a little bit of mussar left its mark just as well. Yesterday was 50 years since Parshas Yisro Tafshin Gimel. On that Shabbos, and my boys, I make no pretense that I remember. I looked it up. On that Shabbos, my father, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, made the following drasha. The Shabbos of Matan Torah, he spoke about the Gemara in Shabbos, Ketapuach be'atzei haya'ar, like the apple tree among the trees of the forest. And the Gemara asked, Lama nimshelu Yisrael tapuach? Why is Klal Yisrael compared to an apple tree? Now Tosafos there explains, we don't need the details, that the tapuach in this pasuk does not mean an apple tree, it means an esrog tree. Why is Klal Yisrael compared to this kind of a tapuach, to an esrog? Ma tapuach zeh piryo kodem le'alav. Just like an esrog, its fruits precede its leaves. Kach Yisrael hikdimu nase v'nishma. So also Klal Yisrael allowed their commitment of nase to precede nishma. What does it mean? It means that the normal motivation for someone to commit himself to nase is nishma. I'll hear, I'll understand, and I'll decide whether I'll do. That's the normal Seder Hadvarim, the normal order of things. But the Bnei Yisrael said nase first and nishma will leave for later. The normal motivation for the growth of a fruit is the fact that there are leaves collecting sunshine. To have the fruit before the leaves is strange. So, kitapuach be'atzei hayah, just like the tapuach, the esrog, in its second year around is there on the tree before the leaves, and yet it lives. So Klal Yisrael said, Nasa before Nishma we will do, with confidence, with bitocham, even though we don't yet understand. To this my father added, and he said, this Gemara is telling us another chiddush. When the tapuach, the esrog tree, allows its fruit to be on the tree before the leaves of the second year develop, he doesn't do that because he decided this is what I'm going to do. This is the teva, this is the nature of the tree. It's the nature of the tree to produce its leaves after its fruits are already growing for over a year on this tree. And so it is with Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael has become a unique being, while every single human being on earth, all 70 nations, they wouldn't commit themselves to a way of life. They wouldn't commit themselves to an obligation unless they know in advance what it will be and they understand that it's good for them, that it's beneficial. Klal Yisrael is a different breed, it's a different bria. It's the teva of Klal Yisrael, it's the nature of Klal Yisrael. That they accept the word of Hashem, they commit themselves to the word of Hashem, and they don't yet understand what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. As I grew up, I saw that Rabbi Elchanan Wasserman says the same thing. Rabbi Yelapian says the same thing. Yodasher Korneo v'chamo Evus be'olav. But this was the message of Parshas Yisro, Tov Shin Gimel. I don't remember the drasha. And had I remembered, at that time it wouldn't have made an impact on me. But as I stand here now and realize there were people with understanding listening, there were people to whom I looked up, still look up, who were listening. Klal Yisrael isn't just like anyone else on the street, except they go to shul instead of someplace else. Their nature is a different being. Their teva is a different teva. Their reactions are different. And Mimela, their actions also have to be different. This is an example of the type of drashas, the type of hashkafas that undoubtedly made an impact, a hashpah, and therefore we have a second generation and a third generation, and by some people a fourth generation, who are the einiklach of this hashpah, and go on in the derech and in the purpose for which Kehillas Yaakov was founded. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu help that in this way Kehillas Yaakov should live on in doros, in generations, as from midor ledor, children, grandchildren, go closer to Torah, grow closer to Shmiras HaMitzvos. Remember the midos Torahs of people who lived in the world, who dealt with the world, and prevailed in their derech of Yiddishkeit. May it be that in this way Kehillas Yaakov continues not only here on Fort Washington Avenue, but to all areas where through children and families and Gola situations it has dispersed. May it be that way. At Bias Goyal Tzedek Ben Herel B'Yamim.
Though this gathering is in memory of Mr. Breslauer, there's another Hashem member who was lifted this year, and the way he lived, he never wanted publicity. This dedication, this gathering is also dedicated to his memory. And that was none other than the behind the scenes, the unforgettable Mr. Lou Longley. The Yevodah L'chaim, we are happy to report a refuah shlema to Mr. Ludwig Wilner, who especially sent regards the hospital, saying he's feeling much better, and he wishes everyone all the best on his 50th anniversary. When I was in Kehillas Yaakov, I had almost daily contact with Mr. Breslauer. And it was often that I would have to contact him late at night. Sometimes 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock at night. And it was very important often. And I would say, excuse me for disturbing you so late. And his classic answer was one that I've adopted myself now. He said, it's never late here. It was never late in the Pressburger house. It was open day and night. Now he's no longer with us. We would normally call him the late Mr. Pressburger. But as he said, it's never late here. His memories and the things he did live on in his children, specifically in Jonah Atemsasser, has taken on almost an identical role in the Kehillah in Baltimore, for my brother, the Rav, another 2 graduates of Kehillas Yaakov. And he does the same thing quietly behind the scenes, organizes everything to make sure everything runs correctly. Now Jonah sent around a letter to many people in the Kehillah asking them for memoirs, things they remember of Kehillat Yaakov. He could gather them together and report on them here tonight. Now I got that letter too, and I wrote down a couple of things, but before I knew it, it was too late to send it. So I thought I would say them here first. A couple of memoirs. When we came to Kehillat Yaakov, my family, I was only about 10, 11 years old, was still in 281 Audubon Avenue. I'm not sure how many people remember that. We got a row, we got to sit in the front row, the Mizrach bunch, all the way over on the right side, the front row. And I was wondering, why is this row empty? Actually, it wasn't empty. Mr. Braunschweiger, Father Mr. Braunschweiger was here. He sat, the only one who sat in that row, the rest was empty. And I soon found out why. The entrance to the Beis HaKisei was right in front of our row. And we had the zchus of greeting everyone as they came out of the Beis HaKisei. Fortunately, we also had a window by our room. That helped ease matters a little bit. Now another thing I remember, and here I would like to ask Mechila from some of the older members. In those days, they had wooden chairs to sit on. And these wooden chairs had slats in the place where you sit. Or at least they should have had slats where you sit. By the time we came, which was 6 years after it opened, many of these slats were missing. In fact, there were only a few completely good chairs in the whole shul. Now, every Friday, a guy would come and clean the shul. And when he did that, he moved all the chairs around, and every Shabbos we had different chairs. So I remember myself and my brothers, we used to come early to shul, and we used to take our broken chairs and find the good ones and change them. So if anyone didn't have such a good chair, it was probably my fault. One observation I still have is the old address on Audubon Avenue was 281. And they moved to Fort Washington Avenue. The address was 390 and 392. Now, 392 is exactly one digit higher in each place of 281. If you add one to each of those digits, 281, you get 392. So it was a Mala, a Kodesh, which is what we hope Yaakov continues to do. With this, I'd like to introduce Jonah and Breslauer.
You're not going to talk so long, are you? You're not going to speak so long, are you?
Rishus, Rav Stern, Rabbanim, and fellow guests. My dear father-in-law, Mr. Breslauer, Shalom, spoke often of his dream of getting all of us, the Kehillat Yaakov children, together. He knew from his experiences at the Würzburg Seminary reunions, Hinei Ma'atov V'Manoim, Shabbos Achim Gam Yachad, how wonderful it is to be with old friends and reminisce. We are so sorry that our dear parents, Aleim Shalom, are not with us tonight to share these memories. Many years have passed, and many of us have gone in different directions, but Kehillat Yaakov and Agudas Hatol still have a special place in our hearts and minds. It seems like yesterday when we learned the many lessons Rav Breslauer Zal lovingly taught us. Torah first and foremost. Eretz Yisrael, yes. Israel, no. Decorum in shul. No running up and down the bima steps, Rebecca. The Rav's devotion to the Rebbetzin Alei Shalom. Remember the Rav walking home on Yom Kippur during Slichos between Musaf and Mincha to see how the Rebbetzin was feeling? The Shiurim, Shabbos and weekdays, morning and evening. One of the boys remembers a lesson the Rav taught him when an older member could not find the place in the Sefer during the Shir. The boy quickly showed the gentleman the place. After the Shir, the Rav taught the youngster that it was worse belittling the elderly gentleman than his not having the place. The simplest Torah speeches to the children. The look upstairs to the girls, or was it the ladies, who couldn't resist throwing down the candies on simplest Torah. The following words probably reflect the feelings of many of us here, especially as we look around tonight. When I was younger, I never appreciated the extent of Rabbi Breslauer's influence and wisdom, but the results of his efforts make that obvious. And let us not forget the food, glorious food, candy, chocolate, candies, and more candies in Simchas Torah. The Frankfurters and Kartoffelsalat, with or without the onions. Salamis and other goodies raffled off at the Hanukkah parties. Mrs. Ilsa May, remember the time the ladies pierced the potatoes the night before the siyum and they all baked with black dots in them? The schnapps on Simchas Torah in the front room at 281. And of course the refreshments at group every Shabbos afternoon. You remember the Talmud Torah, the smell of the Greek bakery, the choir at 281, the Wertheim's apartment next door, the long flight of stairs up, the front room where we played and exchanged candies and could talk and talk and talk, the long line of children waiting for Simplest Torah package from the sisterhood, and the flags from Mr. Oppenheimer. The Simplest Torah years ago, how could anyone forget? The bazaars. One of the girls remembers it as the most glamorous occasion. The Hanukkah parties, the Agudas HaKol groups, the learning, the games, the prizes. On a personal note, Es Chatoai Ani Maskir Hayom, I want to confess. Remember the sign in Simplest Torah that read, "No throwing of candies allowed"? And guess who added the words to the bottom of the sign that read, "Except on Simplest Torah"? And now for a special treat. Here is a poem sent to us by the Braunfeld family that takes us through the years. Before I read it, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you who responded to our letter. Kilas Yaakov is certainly an integral part of our lives. Mazel Tov, it's a boy. They were quick to spread the news. The bris in Kilas Yaakov, of course, nothing else would choose. Wrapped in white, he was brought in through the door. All brachos were pronounced there on the floor. The Suda was in the kindergarten amidst the puzzles, balls, and blocks. Mrs. Hirschfeld and Mrs. Wertheim outdid themselves from the Kartoffelsalat to the lox. Rav Breslauer Zal extended on the parents his brachos, and we all have simchas, nachas, and atzlachos. Look at my payas, how they grew. Before long, he attended kindergarten at 392. The pet project of Mr. and Mrs. Braunfeld from registration to application. We sincerely appreciated their devoted dedication. The tefillos of Yom Noraim emotionally sung by Mr. Wilner and lahadol by Mr. Zucker. Despite his father's warning during duchening, he was secretly a looker. He felt proud, standing next to his father, regal in his kittel. Perhaps, he pleaded, he could wear it just a little. He stood near his sibling in the lobby on the Simplest Torah line for a whole box of chocolate, raisins, and all that were truly divine. Mr. Oppenheimer gave it out with a grin from ear to ear. He helped make the simpler remain during the entire year. Rav Breslauer had children sit in front of the bima for a speech. Every mitzvah is like a candy. Grab many, he would beseech. Every one of us had a mitzvah bag in Shemayim to be filled. With every mitzvah done, we're helping the Beis HaMikdash be built. The boy accompanied his father to shul during the Cheshvan month. He felt the closeness of the Kehillah and wouldn't miss it even once. He once came prepared with a little vort he had learned, just to get a tempting box of dots from ever-friendly Mr. Stern. He watched entranced at the menorah as Mr. Wilner would light. The Kehillah joined together for Moaz Sur, a stirring sight. He walked around with his pushka, collecting for his school. He knew that tzedakah is with us, a most important tool. He joined the men and ate cold cuts and salad at the siyum. To be able to learn with them was his constant dream. He participated in Suda Shlishis weekly. He was full of pride to sit with all the men and not with the girls on his side. He knew that Purim was approaching. Parsha Zachor was laying loud and clear. Everyone came to shul there. Was not a single empty chair. At Haman's name, the Lumnitz, Stern, Braunfeld, Pressburger, Herzl, May, and Prager, children made a riot. But in between those times, it was very quiet. Bring the Mechios Chametz paper in soon, he heard Rav Breslauer remind. Be sure to have it completed in detail and signed. The note on the bulletin board said, please check your lockers. He knew the shul wouldn't appreciate being faced with many shockers. The boys sat partially understanding through the Rav Shabbos Agadol Drasha. It was a combination of Dinim, Musar, and the Parsha. He watched admiringly as the Kehillah let the words impart, since they knew Rav Breslau's words came straight from the heart. For Shavuos, Mr. May took care to order the beautiful flowers. This was but one of his deeds, all for which he spends hours and hours. And the boy knew that behind all shul activities was Mr. Pressburg Olav Shalom pulling the rope. To gain absolutely no kavod was his sincerest hope. Mr. Lumnitz Olav Shalom and Lahavdil, Mrs. Adler, Prager, Hertz, and Wiener, it's too much to mention. All those deserve our thanks, plus a hefty pension. Our Akaras Hatov to Rav Stern Shlita for leading the way, for showing us how to live as sincere Jews, come what may. And thanks to the Chazanim for singing it just right on the frigid winter days, on the long summer nights. Now our boy is an opa, thinking how the years went by in a flash. It wouldn't do to send in only a check, money order, or cash. Thus we hope all appreciate his memories written down for us to treasure. He expects no thanks. It's been our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Look back a lot of memories. After we've heard from so many Mordechais, it's time to move on to Esther. We read in the Megillah, "Vati Esther nosnei ischein be'enei chol roeha." Esther was nosnei chen, found favor in the eyes of all those that saw her. How was that possible? You had delegates from 127 Medinas. How was it they all liked her? The answer is that Esther, Ein Esther Magedes Oladata, Besama. Esther didn't reveal which nation she belonged to. So each nation thought she was one of theirs. Yaakov Kamenetsky, Zatzal, once mentioned, when Mashiach comes, how will all factions of Yiddishkeit, which are always, not always at one, how will they all recognize one Mashiach? Rabbi Yaakov Zatzal said that it's going to be like Esther. Everyone will think that Mashiach is one of theirs. The Hasidim will think he's a Chassid. The Yekes will think he's a Yekes. The Litvashim will think he's a Litvak. So therefore, they will all look up to him. We have a chus to have with us tonight someone who can give us a little insight to what the Melech Mashiach really might look like. Rav Polo is a rare example of a Gadol Hador who is a noted Hasidic Rebbe, warmly accepted in all Hasidic circles. A thinker, philosopher, and advisor, sought after in the broad spectrum of American circles. A Ma'avid Torah and Rosh Yeshiva, par excellence, admired in all yeshivish and litvish circles. But we know that Rav Polo's heart is really in Washington Heights. A few years ago, Rav Polo to speak for us in Monsey during the Aseret Yemei Teshuvah. And he said, he's such a busy schedule, he doesn't see how it's possible. And then I said, with a little chutzpah, I guess, I said, there are 200 people in Monsey who want you to come. And there's just one person who has trouble with that. Shouldn't the will of the rabbim outweigh the objections? Rav Polo paused for a moment and he said, "You're right, I'm coming." And we weren't surprised because we thought Rav Polo was really one of ours. And so it is no wonder that Rav Polo took the time to come to this gathering here tonight, because you see, he's really one of us. It's a big cover to me to introduce the loving Rebbe, Rav Polo.